everyone, and welcome to the Home Designer Landscape demonstration. I'll be designing using Home Designer Professional today. We also have a few other products in our Home Designer line, and most everything that we do today will be available with Architectural and Suite, and I'll try and point out the features that are specific to Home Designer Professional as we move throughout the demonstration. We'll begin today by building the terrain. We'll also be adding in terrain elevation information, a fence, and driveway and sidewalk. We'll explore how to use the plant chooser tool. We'll build a deck, a pond, we'll drop in different backdrops, and then we'll explore some different rendering techniques as well. So let's go ahead and get started by opening up the Home Designer Professional software. Alright, and I'd like to start by reviewing some of the user interface here of the software. So if I go up here to the top toolbar, nearly all of the tools in the software can be located through this toolbar here. We also have these parent tool icons. If you select one, such as this straight wall tool, you'll have this child toolbar palette that will open up on the left-hand side of your screen, and this has other commonly used interior foundation walls, so just related to that parent tool icon there. I do want to open up my library browser to show you what that looks like. So if you select View at the top of your screen, you can choose the library browser. Or you can choose this icon here. This is the library browser parent tool, and it looks like 3 novels. I'll select that to open it up, and this will open a tab on the right-hand side of your screen with the library browser. The library is going to come with this Home Designer core catalog. You can also get additional bonus content and manufacturer's content from our 3D library online, and you can create your own user catalog as well. If you open up one of these folders, you can continue browsing through folders until you find an item that you'd like, or you can simply search in the search bar here. I'm going to exit out of this library for now, and I would like to take a 3D camera view to take a look at what this house looks like as a 3D model. So at the top of my screen, I can go down to 3D and create perspective view. I also have orthographic view camera tools that we'll discuss later, but I'd like to create a perspective view. I can do a full overview, a dollhouse view, or a framing view. I'm going to select the perspective full overview. You'll notice that you also have a camera tool parent icon. If you select that, you can also grab the perspective full overview from the child toolbar palette. So I'll click on that, and now you can see that I have a 2-story home that's building here, and it's going to require a walkout basement design. Now while I'm in this 3D model, I'll show you a couple tools that will allow you to move around the plan. You can click and move around with this mouse orbit tool that I have selected. You'll notice that it's selected because my cursor looks like it has 4 arrows on it. If you don't see this tool here, you can select the mouse or the move camera with mouse parent tool, and the first tool on the child palette is going to be the mouse orbit camera. You can also hold down your scroll button and pan the view around, or you can use your scroll button to zoom in and out on the 3D view as well. Now to begin adding in my terrain elevation information, I first want to build my terrain perimeter. So I'm going to come up here to my terrain parent tool, and all of my terrain tools are going to be located under this option here. We have elevation data information, modifier tools, garden beds, and so on. You'll notice that a lot of these are grayed out, and the reason for that is that you cannot input this information until you first created your terrain perimeter. So I'm just going to go ahead and come up here and select to create terrain perimeter, and that will come into my plan as a basic polyline based object that defines how my terrain is going to build in 3D views. So before I begin adding information and adjusting this terrain, I'd first like to tile my views vertically so I can see what's going on both in my floor plan as well as my camera. And there's a couple ways to do this. So I can go up here under my window tool, and this gives me different options to interact with my display. I can zoom in and out, I can fill the window with the building only, or I can select this tile vertically. You can also hit Shift F6 on your keyboard, that's a shortcut. But what I'm going to do is just grab this tab and pull it off to the right, and that will allow me to tile those views. I'm just going to zoom in and out and pan around here to match my display on both sides so that I can begin adding in information for my terrain perimeter. So if I select this here, I have these polyline edit handles that will allow me to reshape my terrain perimeter. So I can grab this edit handle and resize it, but you'll notice that I'm also getting that temporary dimension. So what I can do in Home Designer software is actually grab that dimension, click on it, and I'll get this dimension input box, and I can go ahead and put in my exact dimension. So I want this terrain perimeter to be 215 feet in length. I'll make sure to put in that foot icon there because Home Designer does automatically set to inches as the default. I'll hit enter and my terrain will be resized. I'd also like to adjust the width here. I want that to be 170 feet. Hit enter. And now I need to move my terrain perimeter relative to my house, so I can grab this move edit handle and just begin placing that. But I would like to be a little more precise here. And so in my plan view, I'm going to come up here and you'll notice that one of my parent tools looks like a ruler. That's my dimension tool parent icon. If I click that, I have a couple different dimensioning tools here. I've got an end-to-end dimension, a point-to-point dimension, a tape measure, and so on. I'm going to grab this end-to-end dimension and I'll click and draw a line from the front of the terrain perimeter to the front of the house. And you'll see that that dimension is displayed here. And I'll grab that tool again and draw a line from the side of the house to the side of the terrain perimeter. And you'll notice here that my cursor is displaying a plus icon, and that's showing that I have that dimension tool selected. So one tool that I'll be using frequently throughout this demonstration is the space bar on my keyboard, and that will allow me to drop whatever tool I have selected and then freely select objects again. You can also use this tool right here called Select Objects, and it will do the same thing. But now I'd like to use these manual dimension lines to relocate my terrain. So if I select a terrain wall, I can grab that dimension and click on it, and I'll get that input box again. And I know that I want this terrain to be 88 feet from the front of my house. Before I hit enter though, I want to point out that I have two different options off here to the right. I can move both ends of this dimension line to resize my terrain, or I can move the entire selected object to resize that dimension line. So I'm going to choose to move the entire object because I've already specified the length and width of this terrain, so I don't want to affect that. I'll go ahead and hit enter here, and the whole terrain just shifts down to account for that 88 feet. I'd like to do the same thing here for the side. So I want this to be 35 feet. Make sure to move entire object and select enter. And now I can just select both of these and hit the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of those dimensions because I no longer need them. I would like to adjust the shape of my terrain to accurately match my plot plan, and we do have kind of an irregularly shaped lot. So I'll show you an image here really quickly of what that looks like. So we're going to need a little bit of editing down here on the bottom left hand side of the screen. So this terrain perimeter, like I said, is a polyline based object. So at the bottom of my screen I have my bottom toolbar here, and this will allow me to further interact with this terrain perimeter. So I can add breaks, I can change a line to an arc, and I have a few additional tools as well. But what I would like to do is add a break off to the left hand side of my screen so that I gain another edit handle. And how I would like to do that is using a draw line CAD line tool. So I'll select this parent tool here, and you'll notice that in my child toolbar palette I have this sun angle and north pointer tool and a couple other CAD tools here. A lot of these are going to be specific to Home Designer Professional, but with the other programs you do have this draw line tool, and that's what I'll be using right now. So I'm just going to click at the back of my garage and draw this line out off to the left, and then I'll hit the spacebar on my keyboard, select my terrain perimeter, and I'll be using this break line tool here. And I'm just going to snap to that CAD line to place a break. And now this is a separate edit handle that I can move freely. I'd like to place one more break here, just somewhere just below that CAD line. And now I can grab that edit handle and pull that out to match my terrain. And I can delete that CAD line. So you can be very precise using dimensioning tools to accurately match your site plan. You can also import your survey information or terrain data if you go up to File and down to import terrain data or GPS data as well. So you can be very specific with your terrain information. But the next thing that I would like to do is add a setback here. This can be done in Home Designer Suite and Architectural using CAD lines and boxes, but with Home Designer Professional there's a shortcut, and I'll be using that shortcut today. So go ahead and go up to Edit and down to Preferences. Preferences are global settings that are maintained between program sessions for every plan you work on. And we do have a lot of controls over the appearance, file management, and your edit behaviors and so on. If you have any questions about your preferences, you can select this help button here. But I'm going to be adjusting an edit behavior. Right now the edit type is set to default. I'm going to want a concentric jump, and I'm going to set this to whatever I need my setback to be, and that's going to be 10 feet for the purposes of this demonstration. So I'll select OK. And now you'll notice that there is a concentric jump icon following my cursor. I'm going to select my terrain perimeter, and in my bottom toolbar I have this copy and paste in place tool. So I'll select that, and when you do so your copy remains selected. So now I can grab one of these edit handles and just drag that in, and that's going to jump in exactly 10 feet. So with that copy selected, I'd like to go ahead and open it up, and you'll notice that this opens up my polyline specification dialog box. So in order to open that up, you can select this open object tool here that kind of looks like an open doorway, or you can double click on an object and that will open up the specification dialog box for that object. The reason that this isn't a terrain specification dialog box is because Home Designer software is smart and will only allow you to have one terrain perimeter because it knows you only need one. And so rather than creating another terrain perimeter, it just creates a basic polyline object. And so I do have these panels with polyline edit tools. So I'm going to go under line style here, and I'd like to adjust the color for my setback to be a lighter gray color. Click OK. And I'd also like to adjust the line style to be a dashed line. And here is where you can check to show the length and show the angle of your setback line. This option is only going to be available with the Home Designer Professional though. I'll go ahead and click OK, and you can see that setback is now clearly differentiated from my terrain perimeter. And before I move on, this icon is reminding me that I still have that edit setting adjusted. So I'm going to go back into my preferences and make sure that I just change that back to default before I forget. So we're ready to start adding an elevation information now. So I'll pull up another image here. So that you can see that there's a nice slope from the front of the house down to the back to the walkout. There's a hill off to the left and so on. So let's go ahead and open back up the Home Designer software and start adding in that elevation information. So if I go up here to terrain and down to elevation data, I have a couple different options here. I've got elevation points, lines, splines, and so on. My favorite elevation tool is going to be this elevation region. So I'll select that, and I want to make sure that I encompass the full area. So I'm going to start outside of my terrain perimeter and click, and I'm just drawing this elevation region out. And I'm going to select that and grab my break line tool and I'll add a break here at the garage so that I can pull that back to the back of the garage. And now this elevation region is telling my entire terrain that's encompassed by that region what to do. So in my 3D view here, I'm just going to pan around and I'll open up this elevation region by double clicking this time. And right now it's marked at 0 inches. So I'll select OK, so nothing's changed because it's 0. But in my plan view, I'll grab that elevation region tool again from my child toolbar, and I'll draw in another elevation region here at the back of the house. And if I open this one up, I'm going to mark this as negative 104. Select OK. And now you can see that I'm getting a nice slope in my terrain as these 2 points kind of meet in the middle here. I'm going to add one more elevation region just kind of off in the bottom right hand corner. I'll open that up and I want this to be negative 110. And then I'm going to add in a hill as well. So I'll go back up under terrain, and this time I'm going to grab a modifier. We have lowered regions, valleys, and so on. I'm going to select this hill, and then I can just click and draw this oval out here. And if I select that, I have this rotate edit handle and this move edit handle that I can use to accurately place this. But you'll notice that sometimes objects like to snap to other objects, and Home Designer software is trying to take advantage of the reference grid. And so what you can do is hold down your control key if you need to freely move an object into place. And then I can open that up, and I want my hill to be 90. Select Enter. And let's take a look over here in the 3D view. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Now you'll notice that my terrain is sitting pretty high relative to the rest of my house. And so if I open up my terrain specification dialog box here, under the building pad I have the option to adjust the subfloor height above the terrain. Right now it's coming in automatically. I'm going to uncheck that, and I know due to the height of my structure itself that I need this to be 21. I'll select Enter, and you can watch as that adjusts accordingly. And just so you know, you can double check that by opening up a room. I'll open up my garage here, and I can go down to structure, and I can see that the floor is at negative 21 inches. So I'll cancel out of that. If I zoom in on my 3D view here, you can see that I have this window well. It's kind of hard to see because it's below the terrain right now. So what I'll do here is I'll come into my plan view, scroll into that window, and at the top of my screen here I have the option to go down one floor or up one floor. I'm going to go down to floor 0, and now I can grab that window well and double click on it to open it up. And I know that I need it to protrude through the terrain perimeter, and in order to do so it needs to be 100 inches tall. So I'll select OK. And now that's cutting through the terrain nicely. So I'll go up here and go back to floor 1 and scroll out. And now I'm ready to start adding in the different terrain features. But before I do so, you'll notice that I have a lot of information in my plan. These terrain primary contours and the elevation regions and so on. And in order to clean up that view a little bit and make it easier to work in my plan, I'd like to turn off the display of those layers. So in Home Designer software, nearly everything is placed on a layer, and those can be thought of as transparency sheets that are laid over your design. So in order to turn those on and off, you can go up to Tools and then Display Options. Or you can also select this Display Options Parent tool here. And this will bring up my Layer Display Options dialog box. Now this is going to look a little differently if you're using one of the other Home Designer programs, but the main capabilities here of turning on and off the display of these layers is going to be available in the other programs, which what you gain with Home Designer Professional is the ability to adjust different properties for a selected layer, such as changing the color or the line style and so on. But I'll just click in here and I'll type in T for terrain. And I want to keep the display of terrain features on. But what I'd like to turn off is the terrain elevation data, the primary contours, and the secondary contours. Select OK. And now you can see that my view is just cleaned up here, but that terrain elevation information is still telling my terrain how to build in a 3D view. So I'd like to begin drawing out my fencing now, but before I do so I want to review my defaults for how the fence is going to build. So I can do that in one of two ways. I can come up here to Edit and go down to Default Settings, and you have control here of nearly everything in your plan and how that will build, and these are plan specific rather than the preferences, which are global settings. So I'm going to come down here to Walls, and if I scroll down I can select Fencing, Edit, or you can also come up here to Build and down to Fencing, and you have a straight fencing option and a curved fencing option. If you select this straight fencing, it'll open that up in your child toolbar palette, and you can double click on that icon to open up that same fencing defaults dialog box. So here I get a view of what my fencing looks like by default. So I can select these different control panels here, such as the rail style, to make adjustments. Right now my railing is specified as a panel. I can also use balusters or an open rail. I have different control over my newels and my posts, my bottom rail, and so on. Then if I go down to newels and balusters, I can select the railing height, the newel and post width, and so on. I can select newels and posts from the library. I could do the same if I were using balusters. I'm going to go ahead and come down to the materials panel, and this lists out each component of my fencing and which material that component is using here. And a new feature of Home Designer 2018 is the ability to select multiple materials at a time. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click to select each of these materials. And then I'll open up my library here by using the Select Material option. And this is the same library that we reviewed in the beginning of this demonstration. So I can go through to Home Designer Core Catalogs, and this is filtered out to the materials. And I can come down to Wood and search through here to find a material that I'd like to use. And if you click on a parent folder, it will give you a display of all the items that are included within that folder. Instead, what I'd like to do is come up here to this Plan Materials panel, and this will list out all of the materials that are used in this specific plan. And if I type in there, I can select C, and I know that I want to use this Color Bright material. I'll select OK, and now you can see that all the components of my fencing have been updated to that Color Bright. So I'll select OK to accept these default settings. And in my plan view, I'll make sure that I have my straight fencing tool selected. And I'm just going to click at the side of my house here and start dragging off until I get a snap indicator at the edge of the terrain. I can zoom in here. And I'm just going to follow my terrain perimeter with this fencing. And I'm just clicking and dragging. You can see that I'm getting that temporary dimension that's displaying. I'm not too worried about that with my fencing here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good there. I would like to add in a gate, so I'll zoom in here in my plan view. And I'm just going to pan around in my 3D view to the front of the house and zoom in where I'd like my gate. And to find a gate, I'm going to open up my library browser. So I'll go ahead and select my library browser icon, and I've opened it up to the architectural folder here. and I'd like to come down to fences and railings, and then down to gates, and I know that I would like this picket gate, so I'll select that, and then if I hold my cursor over my fence, you can see that I'm getting that doorway icon there, and this will allow me to adjust the swing side as well as the hinge side if I just click and pull my cursor around. So I'll place that in my plan, and then I'll grab that gate, and I get this temporary dimension that displays, and I can use this dimension to precisely locate my gate. So I'll click on that, and I want it to be 4 feet from the edge of the house. So using those types of dimension tools, you really know how to dimension everything in Home Designer software. But one more thing that I'd like to show you with this gate is if you double click on it to open it up, you can go down to the options panel, and under 3D display you can mark to show this gate open in the 3D view and click OK. And you can also grab this rotate edit handle here to adjust the door, and I think that just displays a little better in your 3D view. So I'll go ahead and close out of this library browser here. And we're ready to begin adding in the terrain features in the front of the house, and so I'm going to grab another image here and show you. You can see that we have a driveway and sidewalk as well as a road, and there's some front garden beds, some features from the library browser, and we've put in some walkway lights and so on. So let's go ahead and begin designing that. So I'll scroll out here so we can see the whole front of the house, and do the same to my plan view here. And the first tool that I would like to use is the roadway tool. So I'll go up to terrain, and I can go down to road and sidewalk. I have a straight road and a spline road, a straight sidewalk and a spline sidewalk, and I also have a driveway area and a parking lot here. So I'll show you really quickly what these spline tools do, but today we'll be using the straight tools. I'll grab a spline, and this is just a way to draw a curved road. So if I draw out two different portions, they're going to automatically curve together. So I'll go ahead and delete that for now. I'm going to grab that straight road parent tool icon, and I'm just going to click and draw out my roadway. And you'll notice here that I have road that is overhanging from the terrain perimeter. It's extending outside of that, and just keep in mind that only what is within the boundaries of the terrain perimeter is going to display in your 3D view. That's okay there. So I'm going to grab this road, and it looks like I have my setback line grabbed, so I'll hit the tab key on my keyboard, and that will allow me to grab the next selected object. And I can grab an edit handle here, and my roadway is going to extend from the center line. And I know that I want this to be about 60 feet from the fence, so I'll just relocate that there. And now I'll grab my straight sidewalk tool and just click and draw out a sidewalk here, and then I'm going to grab it and bump it up to my roadway, and I'll use that same tool to draw a sidewalk from the front steps to the roadway. And if I select that, you can see that it's 3 feet. I'd like to double click on that to open it up, and in my terrain path specification dialog box, I'll adjust the width to be 5 feet. There we go. And now I'd like to draw on a driveway, so I'll grab my driveway tool, and I'm just clicking and drawing out a square here. And I do want a path from my front door to my driveway, but rather than using a sidewalk tool, I'll come in here later and add in some stepping stones, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. But what I would like to do is place in those garden beds. So I'll go up to terrain again, and I'll come down to garden bed. I have a polyline garden bed, a round garden bed, and a kidney shaped one. I'm going to select my polyline garden bed, and I'll just click here and draw out a rectangle. and then I can grab that and adjust. I know the height needs to be 23 feet from the front of the house. And then I can adjust the shape by grabbing this edit handle and just pulling it down, like so. And one more change that I would like to do is to edit this to be an arced line. So I'll grab that line, and down here in my bottom toolbar I have this change line to arc tool, so I'll select that. And now that it's an arc, I have some specific edit handles. I can reshape the arc or resize it, and I can also change the angle. Okay, I think that looks pretty good for now. So I'm going to come over here to the other side and grab that polyline garden bed tool again, and I'll just click and draw out a rectangle. And I do want to add a break in this rectangle, somewhere around halfway, and then I'll just grab an edit handle and pull it up. Pull that over a little. There we go. And I'm going to change these lines to arcs as well. And just adjust the shape here a little bit. Okay, it's looking pretty good. And so the next thing that I would like to do is add some plants to my garden beds, and I'll show you how you can use the plant chooser tool to really speed up this process. So to access that tool, you can go to terrain and down to plants, and the first option is this plant chooser. Or if I open up my library browser, on the bottom left hand side I have this icon that looks like a tree with a magnifying glass, and that's my plant chooser tool. So I'll open that up. So this plant chooser tool is going to give me a very efficient way to search through the library for plants. I can search by common name or scientific name, by the type, so is it an annual or perennial, the subtype, this could be fruits or an herb, the needs of that plant, so the sun and pH levels and so on. I can also search for the hardiness zone, and if you're not sure what your hardiness zone is, you can select a view map and you can locate your specific region. And we're up here in northern Idaho, and so it looks like we're in kind of a blue and teal color. So if you come check the key over here, you can see that that's about a 5 and a 6. So I'll select OK, and I'll just change that from 5 to 6. And you have some more controls over here. You can adjust the height and the age of maturity, any special characteristics. I'm going to go ahead and search for a plant that's commonly known as a boxwood here. So I'll just type that in, and then I'll hit the search key or the search button, and my results will display in this window on the right hand side. And then if I click on them, my library browser will actually open up right to that plant. So then I can close out of my plant chooser tool, and I can see exactly where this is located in my library browser. I'm going to grab that and just come over here into my plan view to place this plant right next to my front window. And I'm going to double click on it to open it up. And here I can adjust the height, and I want this to be about twice as tall, so I'm just going to type in ×2 and hit the tab key on my keyboard, so that's updated, and Home Designer software will do the math for me. So I can select OK to close out of that. I'll close out of my library browser as well and zoom in here. And with that plant selected, in Home Designer Professional you have a tool down here in your bottom toolbar where you can copy it and then reflect it about an object. And you can see that my cursor is just snapping to different objects in the center line there. So I'll click to reflect about this middle window, and you can see that I now have one on either side. And I'll hold down my Shift key and I'll multiple select both of those objects. And now I'd like to make what's called an architectural block. So this is a way to group multiple items together and save them to your library for use over and over again. So this works really well with garden beds. It also works really well with bathroom vanities or kitchen islands or just really anything that can speed up your design process. And so this is going to be available with Home Designer Architectural and Professional. If I come down to my bottom toolbar, I have this icon that looks like a box here, and this is Make Architectural Block. So I can click on that, and you'll notice that these are now one unit. So back in my bottom toolbar, I also have this tool that will allow me to add this item to my library. So I'll select that, and this is going to open up my user library to the user catalog. So I'll click on this to rename it. I'm going to call this Boxwoods. Hit enter, and then I'm just going to click and drag that into my Northwest Landscape folder. And you can see that I now have that option here. And so with that selected, I'm just going to place one over here by my other windows. And then I can grab that architectural block. And in my bottom toolbar, I have this Center Objects tool. And I'll click to center that on my window. Okay, so for the rest of these plants, I have created architectural blocks that I can quickly just drop in here. So I'll move over and we'll start with this front left garden bed. Grab that architectural block, and I'm just going to click outside, and then I can grab that block and hold down my control key to accurately place it within my garden bed. And another capability that you have is the option to explode this architectural block. So that tool's down here at the bottom of my toolbar, and I can click on that, and once I do so, each one of these individual items will once again be unique and editable on their own. So these blocks are very versatile and can work with many different plans. So now I'll grab my front right garden bed block, and I'll click that in here. And this is just a notification that's letting me know that the object that I'm trying to place is going to interfere with another object that's already there. I'm just going to select that I'd like yes to place it anyway. And now I can just grab that, and I'll hold down my control key and just accurately place this object into my garden bed. And I've also grabbed this pergola with a fountain, which is kind of fun. So I'll click that in over here and scroll around so you can see this in the 3D view. So this is actually a grouped architectural block that I grabbed from our 3D library online. So we have catalogs with grouped items. We also have a landscaping accent catalog from the 3D library online. And we have a lot of those that are available at no additional charge as bonus content. So I do encourage you to go to our website and check those out. And that's just at homedesignersoftware.com. Okay, but I can go ahead and close out of my library browser for now. And I do want to add in those stepping stones that we were talking about earlier that's going to allow a walking path from the front of the house to the driveway. So I'll just scroll around over there, and I can go up to terrain, and I can come down to stepping stone, and I have a polyline stepping stone and a round one. I'm going to go ahead and select the round option, and I'll just start clicking in my plan to place these. Now you can be very precise, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to quickly drop these in here following my garden bed. Okay, great. And I'd also like stepping stones over here from the grass through to the gate. And for the purposes of those stepping stones, I've created another block in the library. So I'll just click to drop this in here. And I can hold down my control key again to move these in place. And this is a great example of when it's necessary to unblock the architectural block and then adjust it. So I'm just going to delete these steps that are outside of the garden bed there. Okay, so next I'd like to add in some walkway path lights on either side of my sidewalk here. And so I am going to go ahead and scroll back up to the top of my library, and under architectural I can come down to lighting, and I have this outdoor lighting folder with path lights, and I know that I'd like this flare. So I'll select that and I'll click to place it in my plan. And you'll notice if you zoom in here that that's sitting pretty high. So I'm just going to double click to open it up. And under the position, I'm going to offset from the floor -10, just so it looks more like a light that would be pushed into the grass there. And now what I'd like to do is make copies of this light. And so I'm going to select it. And with Home Designer Professional, I have this tool in my bottom toolbar down here called the Transform Replicate Objects. So I'll open that up and select copy, and I know that I want to make 4 copies. And now I can move those copies, and I have a couple different options here. I can move in the X delta, which is going to be from the left to the right in your plan view, the Y delta, which will be up and down, and then the Z delta, which you can't see in the plan view, but in the 3D view it's actually the height. And I want to move these along my sidewalk, so I'm going to move them in the Y delta, and I know that I want that to be about 8 feet, and I'll select OK. There's a couple different options here for how you can rotate an object or reflect it. If you have any questions, again, you can just select this help button here. So I'll press OK, and those will come in nicely, and then I can just draw a marquee around those in my plan view to select them all. And again, I'll be using my copy and reflect about tool, and I just want to reflect about my sidewalk, like so. Now, while I still am opened in the library to my lighting, I'm going to close out of this outdoor lighting folder and select wall mounted, and I want a semi-flush mount. And I'm looking for a porch lantern right here. So I can select that, and I'm going to put one of these lanterns on either side of my door. So I'll zoom in here, and I can grab that, and again, copy, reflect about my door. So I use that copy, reflect about tool quite frequently. I do want to place more outside of my garage here, so I'll zoom around to my garage. And again, I'll just grab that to copy and reflect about. This time I'll do it my garage room, like so. Okay, so that completes the design work for the front of the house. I do want to move around to the back of the house now and work on the deck, so I'll show you a picture of what that's going to look like here. You can see that we've at this deck there's an arch right here that's kind of hard to see, but I'll show you how to do that. And then we're going to draw a stairway off to the left, and we'll also be adding in this pergola here. So I'll get back into the software, and with this porch lantern still selected, I am going to scroll around to the back of the house because I want to add those lights back here as well. Okay, and I'll zoom in my plan view, grab that porch lantern, and again I'm just grabbing those to copy and reflect about. And now I can select both of these and again use that copy reflect about tool, and I'll move over here to reflect about my chimney. And you can see that those have come in on the other side here. So now what I can do is zoom out, and I'm going to grab both of these by holding down my shift key, and I'm going to grab the other side as well. So I have all 4 of those multiple selected, and I can hold the Control C key on my keyboard, and I'm going to move down to floor 0, and I'm going to come up here to edit and go down to paste and paste hold position, and that's going to drop in those 4 lights on my floor 0 at the same position that they were on floor 1. So now I can move back up to floor 1, and I'm ready to begin drawing out my deck. So I'll go ahead and close out of my library browser, and I can come up here to builds and come down to railing and deck, and I have quite a few railing options here. I've got a straight and a curved railing, and then a straight deck railing and a curved deck railing, and then some decks without edges and so on. I'm going to grab my straight deck railing here and just click in my plan view and start dragging out this railing. This works similar to how the walls and the fencing work. I'm not worried too much about my dimensions here. I'll accurately dimension it later. But watch as I place this last wall to enclose this deck room. Because I was using a deck railing, Home Designer software will automatically specify this as a deck room, and therefore will build the framing for the deck. So I can double click on this room to open up the room specification dialog box, and under the structure panel this has information about the heights, and you can also adjust your planks and your joist here. We then have a deck panel. This is going to look a little different with the other programs. With Home Designer Professional, you gain this automatically regenerate deck framing option. You also have more deck joist controls here, but the planking and plank overhang and direction and so on will be available with the other programs. The deck support tab is specific to Home Designer Professional. This allows you to specify how you would like your deck to be framed, and it is in a hierarchy. So in order to have posts, you must first have beams. In order to have footings, you must first have posts, and so on. I'm going to turn all of those on and select OK. And now I'm going to come in here and start dimensioning out my deck. I know that I want this to be 12 feet deep here, and then 5 foot 10 inches from the side of the house, and 23 feet long over there on the left. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And we'll just kind of get a better view here in my 3D. So now I'd like to add that arch right here. And in order to do so, I'm going to use some CAD lines like I did in the beginning with my terrain perimeter, just that will allow me to snap and precisely locate my wall breaks. So I will click on that railing to highlight it, and then up here at the top of my toolbar I have this break wall tool, and I'm going to come in and place those breaks right on those CAD lines. And now this is its own wall segment here, and I can use the change line to arc tool. And notice that my framing is automatically updated. So I can select these CAD lines and delete them now. And if I want to get a better view of my framing, I can go down to floor 0 and I can turn on those framing layers. So I'll go back up here to my display options, and I'll type F for framing, and I'll come down to my framing deck beams, deck framing. I'm not too worried about the planking right now, but I do want to turn on the posts, and select OK. And here we can come in and see each individual framing unit. So we have our joists, our beams, our posts, and so on. And these joists, you'll notice, are not bearing on a beam, and so what you can do is just grab that beam and drag it out and snap it to one of those joists. And this notification is just letting me know that I have my automatic rebuild deck framing on, and so any manual modifications will be replaced as soon as this deck automatically regenerates. So I'm going to select yes to turn off the auto deck framing. And then if you want to add additional posts and footings, with Home Designer Professional you can come up here to your manual framing options, and you have this post with footing option. But I'm going to go ahead and go back up to floor 1 and zoom out, and I want to add in the slab here under my deck. And so I'm going to come up here to my slab tool, and I'll just click and drag to draw this out. And you'll notice it's hard to see, it's coming up here on floor 1. So before I go any further, I'm going to click on it to open it up, and I'm going to change the elevation reference. Right now it's building from the floor, but I want to adjust this to build from the terrain, and I want the terrain to bottom to be 0. And while I'm in this slab specification dialog, I'm also going to adjust the material here. Right now it's using this default concrete. I'll select material, and this will open up my library browser right to that concrete material, and I know that I want this concrete 3. This looks a little better with my plan there. So I'll select OK, And now that I can better see that, I'll just begin adding in breaks and just kind of drawing this out here to better match my deck. I do want to add in that arch there as well. Like so. Okay, so now that that's done, I do want to add the stairs in. So I'll just kind of zoom around here. And the stairs, I'll show you that image again. There's just an L-shaped stair coming off the left side of the deck there. And so in my plan view, I'm going to come up to my Draw Stair Parent tool. And you can see in my child tool palette that I have a couple different options. I've got some curved stairs, and then new with Home Designer 2018, I have this automatic L-shaped stair and U-shaped stair, and those already have landings on them. But I'm just going to use this draw stair. I'll zoom in here. And when you're drawing stairs, you want to start from the bottom and click and drag in an upward direction. And then when you need where you would like to place your landing, you can simply click, and Home Designer will place that landing for you there. Now I'm going to double click on this stairway to open it up. And I have a lot of control over my stair system here, so I can adjust my treads. Right now I'm using automatic treads, but if I uncheck that to lock the tread depth, I can adjust those here. I can also uncheck automatic heights, and I have control of the height over here. And then under the style, you can adjust the winders and the landing and so on. You can make alterations to the railing and the newels and balusters. I'm going to go ahead under the general panel and mark this make best fit option. And when I do so, Home Designer is going to automatically select the riser height, the tread depth, and so on to make this staircase the best fit. I'll select OK. And I can zoom in here, and it looks like I need to highlight my full staircase, and I'm just going to use the arrows on my keyboard to move it over to the left a little bit until my railing lines up. And there we go, that looks good. Now you'll notice that my my landing is just kind of floating out here, and I could use a little more support. And so what I'm going to do is take an orthographic cross-section view. So I can come up here to 3D and come down to that create orthographic view. And I have a couple different options here. I'm going to go ahead and select the back clipped cross-section view. And I'm going to click in my plan and just draw out to create a section. And then I can zoom in here to my staircase, and I'd like to tile all three of my views. And okay, so I'm going to come back up here to my framing tools and grab that post with footing tool that we were discussing a little earlier. I'll select it, and I'm just going to click to place a post with a footing here. And this is just an indication that's letting me know that the layer footings post is not displayed, so I'm going to select yes to turn that layer on. And you can see here that my post is coming in to the floor 1 ceiling height. So I'm going to grab that in my elevation view and just drag that down to accurately place it there. And then in my plan view, I'm going to hold down the shift key to select both my post and my footing, and I'm going to do a copy reflect about my landing. And then I'll grab my post with footing again, and I'll place one more and do the same process here just to accurately place this. And grab my post and my footing and select copy reflect about. Okay, great. So now that landing has a little more structural support there. So I can close out of my cross-section view. And one more thing that I'd like to do to my deck is add in that pergola. and that's going to go right here. So I'll open up my library, and this time I'm just going to do a quick search, and I'm going to search pergola and hit enter. And it's this pergola small here. I'll grab that to place in my plan. And if you have a manufacturer's pergola that you're looking to copy, you can just open that up and set the exact height with color, so on. But I'm just going to hold down my control key here until that is placed and fits into my deck room there. Now I can close out of my library browser, and what I would like to do here is adjust the color of my deck. And I'll be using a specific tool for this called the Material Eyedropper tool. So I'll come up here to the top of my screen, and it looks like this little eyedropper, so I'll select that. And when I hover my cursor over my 3D view, you can see that my cursor is now an eyedropper icon. And I can select the color that I'd like to load. And now my cursor turns into this paint roller here. And this will allow me to replace the material of other items. And on the bottom left hand side of my screen, you can see that I have 5 different modes, and these will allow me to specify how broadly or narrowly I'd like to replace colors. I can replace the materials on a component, or I can replace all like materials on an object, all like materials on a room, a floor, or a plan. And then I also have this blend colors with materials option here, and I'm going to leave that selected because I'll be working with my joists and my railing, and I want to make sure that I keep the materials texture that reflects that it's wood. So that's what that will allow me to do. It's kind of like staining the material rather than painting over it. But with my material eyedropper selected, I want to pick the floor mode here. And I've loaded up this white color on my pergola, and I'm just going to click on one of my railings here, and you can see that all of my railings have been replaced, the material with that white color. And I can zoom in here and also do my panels like so. And then I do want to grab that material eyedropper tool again, and this time I'll be grabbing this dark wood material, and I'm going to paste it onto my joists. And then I'll just pan around, scroll around here to my stairs, grab the tool again, grab that dark wood color, and this time I'm going to change to component mode and start painting and replacing the colors of the components on my stairs. And then I can go back into floor mode and adjust my posts here for my additional structural controls. And now all my materials have been updated, and that looks pretty good. So that completes our deck design, and now we're ready to begin adding in the other components to the landscaping in the backyard. So I'll open up that image here of our backyard, and you can see that we have placed some more trees. I also want to show you how to build a pond, and then we'll go over adding in a backdrop and adjusting some of the 3D lighting capabilities. So back into the software. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my library browser again. I'll exit out of this search and scroll back down to my user library. And I have some trees that I'd like to place in here. Just an architectural block. It's pretty large, so I'm just dropping it outside of my plan, and then I'll hold down my control key to place it on my backyard. And then I'm going to explode that block. And you'll notice that I had some additional features and furniture and so on. You can grab all that stuff from the library, but I do want to show you how to create that pond. So I'll just zoom in here, exit out of my library for now, and in my plan view I'm going to come up to terrain and I'll come down to water feature. I've got a round option, a stream. I'm going to use this kidney shaped pond, and I'll just click and draw this out in my plan. And I can open that up for specification, and I'm going to adjust the height here. I want it to be -12 and the thickness to be 28. And then I'm also going to go down under fill style, and I want to create a hatch, a horizontal hatch. And I can adjust the spacing, I can change the angle. What I'm going to do is change the color to be a light blue to reflect water, and select OK. And now, as I'm working in my plan view, I can clearly see that this is my pond, because I am going to make a copy of this here and paste it in place. And then I'll open up that copy, and this is going to be my pond bed. So I'm going to adjust the height to -40, and the thickness is just going to be 1. And I'm going to go down to the fill style, and I'm going to change this to none. And I'm also going to adjust the material because it's coming in as water. But I want my pond bed to be a moss material. So I'll open up my library browser here. I'll close out of the water, and I'm going to go into the grass and ground covers. And all the way to the bottom is this moss option. Select OK, OK, and now you can see that it's beginning to look more like a pond here in my 3D view. I do want to create kind of an outline here, so I'm going to go up into terrain and go down to garden bed, and this time I'll be using the kidney shaped garden bed, and I'm just going to click and draw this out over my pond here. And I'm going to adjust the size just so it's a little bit larger than my pond, and I'll move it slightly. Okay, and now you can see that it's cutting my pond off because it's sitting right on top of it. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up and adjust the height to 0 and the thickness to 0. And then I also have this option here to clip the overlapping terrain features. So that's just going to clip it wherever it overlaps my pond so that I can see through to my pond. So I'll check that. And then while I'm in here, I'd also like to adjust the material. Again, I want that moss material. So I'll go back into grass and ground covers and down to moss. And there we are. Okay, so what I'd like to show you as well is dropping in the backdrop now. So I'm going to open back up my library and scroll all the way to the top. I'll close out of architectural and I'll open up backdrops. Now you can import your own images to use as backdrops, but Home Designer will come with quite a few of them as well. I want a land and a flat land. I can increase the size of this window here by selecting and just dragging this down. And I like this rolling hill, so I'll select that and then I'll simply click in my 3D view, and I can exit out of my library and kind of rotate around here for that backdrop. That looks pretty good there. So now I want to show you some of the different sunlight options. So whenever you create an exterior 3D view, Home Designer software creates a default sunlight source for you. With Home Designer Professional, you have the ability to be very specific in modeling certain times a day and adjusting that default sunlight source. So from your plan view, if you come up to CAD, you can go down to lines and you can select the sun angle here. There's also a north pointer and some other CAD options available here. The sun angle is only available with Home Designer Professional. So I'm going to click on that and just click in my plan. And this will allow me to input the exact latitude and longitude and date and time to accurately reflect a sun angle. I'm going to cancel out of this, and I'll be showing you some different manual sun angle controls that are available with the other Home Designer programs. So first I'd just like to go ahead and select Window and tab my views. That way I can just get into my 3D view here. And I'm going to go up to 3D and come down to Lighting. And I can turn on and off the sunlights, and I can adjust the specific lights in my plan, and I can also adjust the sunlight, and that's what I'll be doing here. So right now you can see that my camera is set so that my sun follows the camera. So I'll just cancel out of this and show you what I mean by that. So if I zoom in here, take a look at those shadows. As I move my camera around, you can see that the sun source is coming from the direction of my camera, and the shadows are updating accordingly. But if I go back into that setting, I can uncheck that and I can manually control this. So I can adjust the intensity of my sun. I can adjust the color. So if I'd like a yellow hue, I can also adjust the tilt angle as well as the direction angle. And so if you want further resources to how to accurately model a particular time of day, such as high noon or sunset, we do have training resources available on our website. But I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this, and this does conclude today's demonstration. Alright, so we offer a free trial version for all of our products. We also have a 30-day satisfaction guarantee on any new purchases as well as upgrade purchases. And as far as upgrade discounts go, if you have an older version of Home Designer software or a different product and you'd like to upgrade, we do offer credits for that. And then as far as training, we have training videos and how-to knowledge-based articles on our website to help you with the learning curve. And then if you'd like to get in contact with any other users of the software, I would recommend the Home Talk user forum. And if at any time you have any questions or need help choosing a product, you're more than welcome to contact our sales department directly. Our number is here at the bottom of your screen, and you can also email us at sales@chiefarchitect.com. But thank you all so much for watching this demonstration, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.